Okay, Stripe just made massive waves in the payment space by developing their own AI foundational model. This isn't just your run-of-the-mill LLM open source model that's been trained with a ton of that's been fine-tuned with a lot of transactional payments data. This is an AI model that's built from scratch, trained on the treasure troves of payments transaction data that Stripe is sitting on top of. A truly game-changing innovation in the payment space. Let's get into it. Fintech giant Stripe announced Wednesday a slew of new product launches. Okay, fine, you're doing a lot of product launches. That's great. Don't bury the lead. The highlights include, there we go, a new AI foundation model for payments. Stable powered accounts. Okay, that's one of the other powered features. One of the other features they announced at Stripe Sessions. Okay, that's all exciting, but I really want to dwell on the fact that they came up with their own payments foundation model. What did that boardroom meeting even look like? They just decided like, hey, we have a lot of these large language models that are great for answering user queries. What if we developed an AI model specifically trained on payments transaction data? Wow, that's very bold. Truly, they have crowned themselves as the most AI forward fintech company at this point. Stripe's payments foundation model has been trained on tens of billions of transactions. Obviously, there's a treasure trove of financial data that Stripe is sitting on. Emily Glassberg-Sands, Stripe's head of information, a company's going to be AI first when they have a head of information at the company. So it captures hundreds of subtle signals about each payment. Now, there's a lot of flavor to the data point. A financial transaction data point or a transaction as a data point isn't just like, oh, you paid this guy, paid that guy this much worth of coins or money or this currency. There's a lot of flavor and a lot of features to each transaction and a lot of metadata that is stored about these transactions. So, yeah, I totally buy that there's a lot of subtle signals about each payment. Now, how is Stripe using this? Reduced card testing attacks by 80% over 2 years. Okay, so Stripe, like any other fintech company, is pretty big on fraud detection. I am betting that their AI foundational model's key use case, there we go. Um, One of the key use cases is fraud detection. This is the key this is the key problem that is ripe for AI powered targeting in the fintech space, in the payment space. How do you make sure that a payment coming through is a non-fraudulent one? How do you make sure the payment that is coming through gets settled and dispersed? Stripe's previous models gradually reduced card testing attacks by 80% over 2 years. Card testing attacks are a type of fraudulent activity in which someone tries to determine whether stolen card information is valid so that they can use it to make purchases. Okay, so card testing is a step in credit card fraud. Did not mean to zoom in on my face. Let's zoom out. Zoom out, please. Yes. Yes. There we go. Perfect. All right. We're back um, to regular size Rashad's face on camera. Anyway, Stripe claims that its foundational model increased detection rate for card testing attacks, which is a step that fraudsters use in credit card fraud and committing credit card fraud to just make sure if the stolen card information is actually real card information that they can use to commit uh, credit card fraud. So something that took Stripe's previous technologies 80% over 2 years to get an 80% reduction in card testing was achieved by this foundational model by 60% overnight. Really effective, really narrow AI use case, and again, inspiring. I think this is using AI in all of the right ways, in all the right contexts. All right, what else have you got in the world of AI? No, this isn't new news, but Jensen Huang has definitely raised alarms for how much of AI researchers are Chinese. This does pose a problem for the US, particularly when the US is making it harder for talent from abroad to come into the US to help staff US-based companies. There's two components to this, right? There's obviously supply chains that are being disrupted by tariffs, but there's also, like flight of talent into the US that is being hampered by restrictions on immigration and a generally non-friendly attitude towards travel into the US by internationals at this point. It is an infinite game. This is true. I think the US really needs to set up um, strategies that attracts talent and that has that brings in the right raw materials and has the right supply chains in place to help these AI first companies build out their capabilities and deliver products. Nvidia got spooked because um, it got a huge, not just a slap on the wrist, but a massive, massive hamstring or a handicap when it there we go when its exports of specifically the H20 processor chips to China was restricted. And this cost the company about $5.5 billion in earnings. So Nvidia is obviously suffering due to these tariffs. It's not necessarily a supply chain issue for Nvidia just yet, but it's a direct, like top line growth constriction. They're not able to sell as much as they could. And China is one of their biggest markets, so this is definitely a cause for concern. But what I wanted to focus specifically on this article is their unveiling of the Groot N1. Again, this isn't new news. This is something that was revealed as part of GTC 2025's keynote, but this is a foundational model for humanoid robots. On the theme of foundational models, a foundational model isn't a retrained or fine-tuned LLM model. A foundational model is an AI model that is developed from scratch, trained with specific purpose-tuned training data to serve a very specific purpose. For Stripe, it was fraud detection using a lot of payments transactional data. For Nvidia, the Groot N1 is a foundational model specifically for humanoid robots. And I mean, the implications for this are a bit harrowing. You know, there's a global labor shortage, which is a little maybe tone deaf to say when people are getting laid off left and right, but I guess the grand intent for Nvidia is to replace human labor with these humanoid robots. By the end of this decade, the world is going to be at least 50 million workers short. Robots could fill these gaps. So let's look into Nvidia's announcement article for the Isaac Groot N1, the world's first so this is open source, humanoid robot foundation model and simulation frameworks to speed robot development. All right, portfolio of technologies to supercharge humanoid robot development, introducing NVIDIA Isaac Groot 1, the world's first open, fully customizable foundation model for generalized humanoid reasoning skills. By the way, this foundational model is available on open source for you to download and fine-tune for your robotics applications, so do go check it out. Specifically if you're into robotics, which if NVIDIA is making all the right predictions, there's going to be a 50 million um, people shortage, labor shortage that's knocking on the window, and robotics could help fill that need. If you want to help fill that need, or if you want to be a part of the robotics revolution that is going to help fill such a massive and unwieldy labor shortage, then you better get to work on, like training your robots with these AI capabilities. So the other technologies that NVIDIA unveiled include simulation frameworks and blueprints such as NVIDIA Isaac Root Blueprint for generating synthetic data. Well, that's one of the other challenges with developing AI models these days. It's very difficult to come up with real data. And we'll get into this in the next article that we look at because there it, we're quickly running out of real data that's generated by human footprint that we can train our AI models with. Specifically, when it comes to robotics, there isn't a lot of vision motion data that is available for robotics projects to be trained on. So NVIDIA's developed this tool called Group Blueprint that helps you generate synthetic data that you can use to train your robot AI models with open source physics engine. Now, NVIDIA is dropping a whole bunch of tools that you can use for your robotics development projects. Available now, Groot N1 is the first of a family of fully customizable models that NVIDIA will pre-train and release to worldwide robotics developers. That's right, level the playing fields. Don't set up boats that you don't need to. If you're releasing an open source product, make sure that it is accessible to the largest section of community developers. Okay, so we have this model, the Groot N1, 2 billion parameter model that's available on Hugging Face. Go check it out. But let's get into the other issue, the other flag that's been raised by Cloudflare about the decline of the web and how that plays into how there isn't enough real data for AI models to be trained on. Google's value exchange with content creators has collapsed. Bold, how has that collapsed? And the web's business model is cracking, according to Matthew Prince, who is the CEO of Cloudflare. AI is upending the economic engine of the web, and Google is at the center of this disruption, according to Cloudflare CEO Matthew Prince. Okay, AI is going to fundamentally change the business model of the web. The business model of the web for the last 15 years has been search. Search drives everything that happens online. This is fair. I mean, this is also Google's dominance play. Google is the most effective search engine. It is the search engine with the mostest, the hostess with the mostest, and it's losing a lot of search traffic to OpenAI and to these LLMs. Google's tipping point, Google's value exchange with content creators has collapsed. 10 years ago, for every 2 pages of a website that Google scraped, they would send you one visitor. That was the trade. Now it takes 6 pages scraped to get one visitor. That drop reflects the size of zero-click searches, which happen when searchers get answers directly on Google's search page. Today, 75% of the queries get answered without you leaving Google. This trend, long criticized by publishers and SEOs, is a part of a broader concern. AI companies are using original content to generate answers that rarely never drive traffic back to content creators. Therein lies the collapse of the web economy. You see, the incentive for content creators, for people that write blog posts, for people that create YouTube videos, for people that set up websites, is so that they can drive traffic to these sources, these primary sources of information, and get clicks on ads that may be displayed on these blogs, on these videos, right? And therefore, the hope is that they would get a bit of ad revenue. But if AI models are scraping all of these primary sources and giving consumers the information they need without letting these clicks happen, without letting these consumers land on these primary sources of information, then consumers aren't getting paid. Hence, they're going to stop making content. This kind of plays into the lack of real data problem getting worse. There isn't as much incentive for content creators to produce real data, to put real data on the internet. AI makes the problem worse. LLMs are accelerating the crisis. AI companies scrape far more content per user interaction than Google ever has, with even less return to creators. What do you think it is for OpenAI? 250 to 1. So OpenAI scrapes 250 pages to generate that one user landing on one of these scrape pages. What do you think it is for Anthropic? 6,001. Okay. Yeah, not a lot of incentive for content creators. Not great. What else is happening in tech news this morning? Tinder parent match cuts 13%, sorry. Workforce forecast revenue above estimates. Now, these are very conflicting outcomes, right? You have a reduction of workforce, but the company is doing pretty well. It's growing pretty rapidly. This kind of company restructuring is going to be pretty common going forward. I think companies are figuring out that a lot of the processes can be replaced by AI. A lot of the processes that lead to development of software can be automated by AI. Even a lot of business functions like support, doing moderation, etc., can be completely automated by AI. And even as the company has a lot of need for all of these functions, for developing software, for writing out new features, for supporting more tickets, for doing more moderation, the pace of AI productivity gains is outpacing the need for human employees. So what makes business sense for these companies is to just do layoffs. Match Group, which is the holdings company that owns Tinder, on Thursday forecast second quarter revenue above Wall Street estimates and said it would reduce 13% of its workforce to cut costs. The layoffs are the first major structural change at Match since new CEO Spencer Rascoff took helm in February and was tasked with tackling a slowdown in user engagement. So it's super easy thing for CEOs to run to whenever they're given the job. And they want to make a name for themselves, is to just do layoffs. They are the most transparent method of cost cutting, and they are a surefire way for you to signal to the market like, hey, I'm a serious CEO, I am all about making tough decisions, and I am cutting costs. So kind of makes sense, kind of tracks. The online dating industry has hit a rough patch as persistent inflation and a lack of innovative features prompted customers to move away from dating apps such as Tinder and Bumble. Yeah, I think the last innovation that happened in the dating space was swiping. I don't think much has changed since then. I honestly think the dating ecosystem is ripe for innovation and disruption by AI tools and technologies. Why don't we have, like personas that are trained to represent people on dating apps, and these personas, these AI agents, can date one another. And if there is a match or if there's chemistry, then you set up an actual physical outside of the social media world date that people can go on, right? I think there's a lot of potential for disruption by AI in the dating space. In response, Match and Bumble have been refining their applications and introducing artificial intelligence features such as AI-enabled discovery to make it easier for users. This isn't good enough, right? I think AI-enabled discovery, aka recommendation engines, have existed for years now. This isn't disruptive innovation. I say give it's like, wouldn't dating be so much more fun? Wouldn't dating innovation be so much more fun if you could sort of sit back and watch your AI persona go out into the ether webs of Tinder and Bumble and just do go on these virtual dates with other AI agents, and if there's a click, you get a strong match and you go on an actual date. All right, enough about taking jabs on the dating world. Instacart CEO Fiji Simo is joining OpenAI. This is joining OpenAI, joining these top tier AI companies is going to be probably the most lucrative exit, not exit, the most lucrative career move for C-level executives at this point. And don't get me wrong, Instacart is a company that's doing phenomenal. But for the Instacart CEO to leave Instacart, the helm of Instacart, and join OpenAI as CEO of applications. There's a CEO of applications. You can be the well, I guess, yeah, chief applications officer, but to sort of get a title. So there's going to be multiple CEOs of OpenAI. Anyway, she's left the top job at Instacart to join the CEO suite at OpenAI. Big move, and this is honestly the move that makes the most sense for her career. To be honest, Fiji Saimo has a pretty impressive career, as you'll notice. I mean, this I think all of the work that she's done so far set her up pretty well for this transition to become a CEO at OpenAI. Seems like she's done quite a bit. Let's look into her education. Master's degree in business commerce from UCLA. It's a pretty well-known school. Master's of Science in Management. So a lot of business-based degrees. And then in her career, she's okay. That's got to be the thing that really helped catapult her career. If you've been with Facebook since 2014, you've overseen tremendous growth at the company, and you're going to be signaling to your potential employers that you're a CEO, you're a leader that can handle tremendous amounts of stress and then can navigate a company through a tremendous scale, which is super important, super impressive. Board member at Shopify. She's been a board member at OpenAI since March of last year. So she kind of understands the ins and outs of the company very well. So this wasn't a sudden, unmeditated move. And she's been with Instacart for about 4 years. Cool. All great stuff. All great stuff. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman said he would continue in his role overseeing verticals like research, compute, and applications. Simo will directly report to Altman. So CEO of applications reports to CEO of everything, Sam Altman, CEOE. Applications bring together a group of existing businesses and operational teams responsible for how our research reaches and benefits the world. And Fiji is uniquely qualified to lead this group. Serving as an OpenAI board member over the past year, Fiji has already contributed a great deal to our company. Yes, she knows the ins and outs of the company already. She understands all the skeletons in the company's closet. I mean, there's obviously been a flight of a lot of engineers and leaders from OpenAI because of disagreements over how transparent they are with their ethical conduct. So she knows the skeletons, she knows what the job entails, and she signed up. Anyway, she will transform her role at Instacart over the next few months and join OpenAI later this year. Cool, good for her. We're on the sidelines, waiting to see progress on this role. The last bit of surprising news that I want to share with you guys today is Waymo is actually outperforming human drivers in what can only be described as the Uber drivers' nightmare. This is what Uber drivers did to taxi drivers, and now driverless taxis are doing this to Uber drivers. But this is all happening within the Uber ecosystem. Waymo's robotaxis are available exclusively on the Uber app in the Texas capital, Austin. And today, the ride-hailing company provided some color on how that partnership is going since its launch in early March. So the launch just happened about a month ago, 2 months ago. Waymo's approximately 100 vehicles in Austin are busier than over 99% of all drivers in Austin in terms of completed trips per day. That is a harrowing statistic. So these Waymos, each of these Waymo cars are getting more trips per day than any of the Uber drivers, at least 99% of the Uber drivers in Austin. CEO Dara Khosrowshahi said in prepared remarks during the company's Q1 earnings call. He added, so far, this launch has exceeded our expectations. This has been incredibly clever on behalf of Uber. I actually pegged Uber to be one of the companies that would be rolling out robotaxis off their own, but what they've done instead is uh, tied their bandwagon to the winning robotaxi play in the robotaxi space. Boohoo Tesla, you were supposed to beat Waymo to the market, kind of got left in the dust a little bit by Waymo, but Waymo clearly is the first to market with actual sales, actual with an actual fleet out there, transporting humans, delivering on completed rides in multiple cities now. And Uber has very cleverly decided to hitch their wagon to Waymo. Okay, that is it for the news today. Same time tomorrow, around the same time tomorrow. Catch you.